I'm assuming it didn't save the game, but... Yo! Yeah, we dropped the Ungils from Kitava. That's pretty funny. Yo, what's up guys? Inco here with the build update, and this is for the Bleedbow Deadeye. We're level 80 character right now. We basically did an SSF simulation on this character. And all of our gear was crafted with like essences. Essences are always great. Obviously if you're in an SSF environment. Reeds for health. Your doubts for evasion on gear if you want. Contempt for your bows and quiver, obviously for flat fizz. So we have no uniques on right now. We'll go over the gear after. But honestly, going through leveling this character with no leveling gear, no uniques or anything. Basically just like, you know, full SSF. We were going through and doing vendor recipe for the bow and that. Very surprising. Like, I'd give it a solid B going through. And next league, it's only getting better. You know, obviously with mark on hit poachers, buffs to bow bases, buffs to quivers, particularly the heavy arrow quiver, with a bunch of flat fizz. But yeah, for the boss, you're just going to want to make sure that you're using your single target puncture and keeping them ensnared. Make sure they're counting as basically moving all the time, taking that extra damage from bleeds. Now we'll just go through, finish clearing the map. And also, every time I play this build, there's two things I always go back and forth between. So in the clear setup, whether using chain or pierce. And I do like chain just because I think I prefer chains over pierce in general. But obviously in like a leveling environment, if you get a drill net quiver corrupted without the pierce, then I would definitely use pierce in your clear setup. It'll make it feel a lot better. There's one thing to mention with ensnaring arrow. Make sure you are not using like a pierce quiver. Like pierce, fork, or anything, it's gonna ruin ensnaring arrow on single target. So like clearing, it's not gonna be as big as a deal. You're not really gonna notice it. But when there's only one target, if you have like a fork or pierce or something, it's going to completely miss that boss. And so you're not going to be getting the ensnaring arrow on them. Hence, they are not going to be counted as moving and taking extra damage from bleeds. That is a very important thing to remember. And that's pretty much the map cleared. So on stream, obviously this is no jewels. Like I said, I wanted this to be like bare bones SSF. We went through, we tried a bunch of different trees, doing like iron reflexes, hybrids, and ultimately just felt like Grace with 100% spell suppression felt the best. So right now we have like unbuffed, like 22k evasion, if you will. Damage is not bad at all. Like I said, pretty surprising going through leveling with this build. I honestly expected it to be a lot worse. And so we just have like a contempt, also crafted bow, and the chaos crafted physical damage here. And we're on a 5 link using Puncture, Deadly Ailments, Vicious Projectiles, Brutality, and Swift Affliction. So this is our single target. Just have a helmet. Don't mind the chant, just something I had lying around. And we have Precision here, Dash, War Banner, Grace. And then we just have a Quiver. And here you're just looking for dot multi, is that good stuff. Bow, a real cheap annoint, is heavy draw. So it is just Sepia, Verdant, and that one is drawing a blank. Path of the Warrior is also pretty good because it gives you strength. That can also help with the build. We just have a chest. Mind you, like these are 6 link, but we're using 5 links. I just want to make that clear. It's just stuff I had lying around because trading in standard or trying to find stuff is absolute pain. So this is our clear setup. Puncture, GMP, Chain, Vicious Proj, and Deadly Ailments. Like I said here, I'm going to personally leave it up to you if you want to either use Chain or Pierce. So I go back and forth between the two, and it's another thing that's to be said in the Ensnaring arrow setup. And so here on our boots we have Maim. That is going to boost our damage a lot, maiming the enemies. Snaring arrow, Mirage Archer, and GMP. So instead of Mirage Archer, you can use Ballista Totem support. And it's nice like through early maps and stuff, but I'm gonna be honest, later on and against like stronger bosses and stuff, totems are kind of just gonna get one hit. So that's kind of why here I lean more towards Mirage Archer. And you want to use your Mirage Archers or your Ballistas, whichever you decide, to kind of cheese to get the Rupture stacks, because it's going to have like the same crit. And I mean, here you see like even on, you know, we still have a decent amount of crit, 69%, not buffed, no flash up or anything. So you want to use that to stack your Rupture stacks, because Rupture, critical strikes which inflict bleeding also inflict Rupture. So a nice way to do that. And that's also why I'm sure you'll see it in the footage, I use my clear skill, because we don't have 100%, you know, bleed chance here. We don't have the luxury of that. If we did, I would definitely not be using Puncture to clear. In my opinion, there's much better skills. I personally love Rain of Arrows. Split Arrow is good too, but this is why we have to use Puncture for clear, especially in an SSF environment. But if you're trade, you can obviously easily, you know, cap your bleed chance. You can use Rain of Arrows for clear, stuff like that. Obviously, your single target's still going to be Puncture, because that's insane. So yeah, this was ultimately the tree we decided. I'm pretty happy with it. And in the POB, we're going to have, you know, like SSF gear, trade versions, jewels, and then clusters and all that. And it's relatively easy. If you're in an environment where you have the Assailum helmet and cluster jewels, you can easily get 30 to 40 million snipe DPS with just the Betrayal Bow, the Crimson Storm. So going through, like I said, with leveling, we were just using vendor recipe for bows, which I will go ahead and show that real quick for people that don't know. So here we just have a decimation bow, right? And we're going to buy a rustic sash. So the rarity of the rustic sash depends on how much increased fizz the bow is going to get. A white is the lowest tier, a magic blue is the middle, and a rare yellow is going to be the highest. So you take the bow, and if you have the extra whetstones, I would definitely recommend, you know, putting those on beforehand, because it's also going to add fizz damage for us. And then we'll say that we have a rare rustic sash, whetstone here. So come here and then vendor them, and you'll notice you get a serrated decimation bow back. You do that, and then you can also, if you have an AUG, put it on there. That's bad. I wouldn't recommend regoling it early on. If you're in like a later version, sure you can, but you want to do this progressively through the axe in SSF. If you're feeling like your damage is falling off, you want to upgrade to a new bow, and that'll boost your damage a lot. In SSF also, some things that can really help you, because using Haemophillias on this build is like so nice. It's like night and day better for clear, because puncture clear is kind of it's okay, but like you're not winning any words with it. But when you get the Haemophillias with the bleed explosions, that's really nice. So in an SSF environment, or even trade, Gwenin is going to be your best friend, because there's only one unique version of Serpent Scale gauntlets that exist, which that is the Haemophillia base, and Haemophillia is the only unique. So you can chance orb them, or you can gamble them from Gwenin. And the same is also kind of said for Sinner Tricorn. But with that, there is Alpha's Howl and the Assailum helmet. Obviously, you want the Assailum helmet, and unfortunately, they are the same item level, so you can't make a lower like item level or a lower level character and gamble for it, because you're still going to have those two variants. So Haemophilia gloves should be quite easy. Assailum helmet, you'll be able to gamble it relatively easy too, or find it. It's just a matter of when. But yeah, Expedition will definitely be your best friend.
Buongiorno.
Same can be. Let me mute this. I'm sorry. I thought I had those off in this. Thank you for the follow though. So the same thing can be said with the Crimson Stormbow. You're going to want to be farming Betrayal safe houses for that. And it is a very good mid-game bow. And it can also potentially, once your crit chance is high enough and you have Ungils in that, you can definitely use Rain of Arrows because it gives like 50% chance to bleed from critical strikes. So that's already 50%. Haemophillia gives some too. And you can definitely cap your bleed chance there. And even use like a chance to bleed in your clear setup. And that'll change the skill. Which personally I would recommend if I go back to this build. I think I will. Puncture clear is okay, but I just love Rain of Arrows, especially Celestial Rain of Arrows. It's so nice. I think we covered everything with the gems and that. Steel Skin Malevolence here. Obviously, we would have mark on hit poachers. Like I said, the gear is all really bad. This is simulating a poacher's mark, a worse version because we can't get quality on it. The quality of poacher's mark at base gives you a chance to get frenzy charges on hit. So we will have frenzy charges on boss, which is going to help, especially when we're in the snipe version. But frenzy charges in general are just very nice extra damage and attack speed. So as far as that, and then essences are also going to be really good, whether if you're in an SSF or trade environment. Essences are great for, you know, your greed ones for life, contempt for bow and quiver for flat fizz, doubt for evasion, resist essences are always good also, whether that be fire, lightning, cold, chaos, any of those. I definitely recommend rushing spell suppression 100% chance as soon as you can, whether that means taking more nodes here, taking this wheel also. You can also take the other mastery, 10% chance to suppress spell damage if you have boots, or if your boots, helmet, and gloves have evasion. And then the Act 8 reward, there's a Conqueror's Jewel you can grab too that also has 5% spell suppression. Any amount helps, and you definitely want to have 100%. One thing I do want to mention, this node gives you 10% chance to suppress spell damage while on full life. Make sure you check in POB or lower your life to make sure you're still at 100% spell suppression. So if I use Blood Rage, I'm no longer full life, I'm still 100%. But, let me grab a Regret Orb. If I didn't have this node, I am now 98 because I'm missing 2% spell suppression. But if you notice, if we go back to full life, I'm 100. But that's not good. You want 100 all the time. So, you know, make sure, because we are taking this node, obviously it's too good not to take. Make sure that you are capped. Only thing I'm missing here, because like we just didn't get the levels. I think we will be taking the War Banner Mastery here, because I would like to have some more mana. Especially if we're going to use mark on hit poacher's mark. Unfortunately, it's a 300% cost gem, and a poacher's mark level 20 is like 29 or so. So I'd like to have more mana. So we will be taking a War Banner reservation efficiency there. Yeah, I was very surprised running through this build with like, you know, budget gear and that, how well it did. We basically just started with Split Arrow until we got Puncture. And then we were also using Shrapnel Ballistas with Chance to Bleed to boost our damage some on bosses and that. And then once we got Puncture, we obviously had our 2 Puncture setups. One with like LMP and that for clear, pierce. And then the other one was more single target. And I don't think we know when we get mark on hit. I'm assuming it's going to be Act 3 the same time you get like Poacher's Mark. So you definitely want to rush getting that in your setup, because Poacher's Mark is really strong for this build. And Link to Mark on hit. Herald of Purity is also very good for this build. You would obviously take Precision for extra crit, accuracy, both of which are very important. Ungils is amazing. If you find one early in like SSF, that's great. Obviously in trade you can buy one. They're very common, really cheap. Nothing too crazy there. What else do we miss? But oh, so some endgame stuff. Endgame Snipe version, like in an environment where you have access, or you have an Assailum helmet, you have Cluster Jewel access. For Snipe 6-stage DPS, 30 to 40 million Snipe DPS is easy on this build, and like on a good budget. I would say So in this scenario, let's say you have a Crimson Storm bow, because that's just like the mid-game bow. You can craft a much better rare bow that boosts your damage like 10 million. But let's just say Crimson Storm, and like you have your cluster set up, your Assailum with Puncture enchant in that, and then Influence Chest. Those are the real like money things you're going to be looking at. And a Dirty Techniques annoint, so like a golden oil on that. Yeah, so those would be the real expensive things. I'd say you're looking anywhere around like in a trade environment around 20x, 25x. So for that amount of DPS, that is very nice. And in this iteration of the build, we also got a lot more defense instead of Iron Reflexes. Iron Reflexes is nice, but because of Wind Ward, you know, we're always getting hit. And sure, I was relatively staying around like, you know, with the more attack speed in the later game and everything, I was staying around like 5 to 7 stacks, just depending on like if it was a boss, you know, how dense the map was. But Evasion lets us keep our Wind Ward stacks higher up because we're not going to be getting hit as often. We're evading attacks. So a very nice combination there. And also in this version, I capped spell suppression because that was something in the other version that definitely hurt a lot. There's a lot more glass cannon. So we definitely have a lot more defenses here and more sustain because of Poacher's Mark. It gives a lot of life and mana on hit. And then Wind Ward, you know, evasion. And we also have the Ensnaring arrow, which slows enemies. It like pins them down. You'll see they'll have like arrows tethered to them on the ground and that. And then we also have extra defense from Flask. So, you know, like if we pop our Flask right now, we're like 21,000 evasion. Then we go up. So I actually, these Flasks are bad. Like I said, I wanted to simulate it as close as possible. You would obviously want a Jade Flask for extra evasion. And you'll easily be in, you know, the mid 30,000s with evasion, which is very good. That should be somewhere around like high 80s, close to 90% evasion chance. And obviously we're ranged, so that's a benefit too. This is defense in itself. Yeah, leveling the build and like the numbers I was saying, the damage numbers and everything going through, those are obviously without the buffs that are coming in 3.17 to the bow bases, the quiver bases, like the mods and that. And also we don't know, you know, the new influence mods. There could be some crazy stuff there too. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised about this build. Like because Tarky shouted the build out and I kind of made it like a glass build. And I never really visited it back. I loved the build watching the boss bar melts, but I never liked how squishy it was and how spread I was on the tree. And I think in this iteration of the build, I'm really happy with it. Leveling with it was smooth. I was pleasantly surprised. The endgame version, the progression, it all looks really good. So I'm really happy with this version, and I can definitely recommend it for SSF, but that was something I was very hesitant about because I know a lot of people wanted me to update it, and I don't really want to recommend a build that I personally wouldn't go through or play myself. And so that's why we did a full run on this build, tested different variants, didn't like put crazy gear that you're not realistically going to have early on. And yeah, I was really surprised. And the buffs and having Mark on hit, Poacher's Mark and everything should just make it that much better. Also, someone in Twitch did make a good recommendation about endgame min-maxing the build. So now that we no longer need a Poacher's Mark ring in the end-to-end game, you can get Haemophillia gloves with like +1 vulnerability on hit or attack crit, vulnerability on hit. And then you can use a synthesized Herald of Purity ring to also fit in Herald of Purity in the build and get a lot more damage. So yeah, I think I covered about everything. Big things I just want to say when you're going through the campaign. I mentioned the skills to use and everything to help, but do be upgrading your bow whenever you feel like your damage is getting low or you're hitting a wall, although progression should be insanely much more smooth with the buffs to the bow bases, how much fizz we're getting. Cap your spell suppression like later in the acts. Early on, don't stress about it as much because you can't even roll that stuff until like 40s. But once you're later in the acts and getting close to maps, I can't stress enough how good spell suppression is on top of evasion. Evasion itself is just nice, and it's kind of honestly but when you combine spell suppression with evasion, it feels so much better. So I can't stress that enough. Like, take extra points if you need, drop wherever points necessary. Like, if you're in trade, you don't need as many crit nodes, crit chance nodes in that, because you're going to be capped with crit with Ungils. You can take these nodes, there's spell suppression nodes here. So I can't stress that enough. Do cap your spell suppression when you're like into maps and that. It's going to make your life so much easier, and you're going to feel so much more tanky. So yeah, that's the build. In the POB, I'm going to have like leveling trees. I also have SSF gear and trade gear. I'm going to have notes on stuff that I talked about in this video, like the expedition, gambling, Haemophillia, gloves, all that. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I was definitely a little hesitant updating it because I wasn't really... I was happy with the damage of the first iteration last league, but I'm happy with this one. We got a lot more defenses on it. More damage too, actually, even without even countering in the buffs that are coming. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to try to cover everything in the POB, but as always, I might forget something, so, you know, feel free to ask when I'm streaming, YouTube, wherever that may be. Yeah, appreciate you guys watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in Archnemesis.